Okay, so today's jargon term is an oldie but a goodie, and there's a reason why I wanted to use it today. It is antecedent. It's probably, like in the top 10 first jargon terms that you learn after somebody in your family gets diagnosed with autism. But even as I'm saying that, I want to put the asterisk after this. That's only if things are going really well for you. If you have had a diagnosis of autism and it's been a month and no one has said the word antecedent for you, we need to worry. Because it's one of the important ones, okay? And it's important that we understand it if we're going to get to the progress that is so richly deserved. Okay, so our term is antecedent. Let's take a look at what our actual definition for antecedent. Antecedent, anything that occurs or is present immediately before the behavior of interest. Okay, as terms go and as definitions go, this isn't the worst one, right? But it's a little slippery for me. So let's go to our working definition. Antecedent is what happened before. This is like the beginnings to the keys to the kingdom. So, you leave your child with a babysitter and you come back and the babysitter is hysterical and says he had a tantrum and he was throwing things and this was going, right? And, you start to feel all that panic of, oh my gosh, I can never leave home again. And you start to picture your whole life slipping away. And instead, you stop yourself and go, wait a second. And you kind of put on your Sherlock Holmes hat and you go, what happened before? What happened before? Not what happened, but what happened right before. And by the way, you can use this all the time. You can, even when it's you and you're standing there and a tantrum happened, you can think to yourself, okay, what happened right before? But especially when you are not present, if it's school and you go to school and they go, oh, well, he hit someone. And we can't have that behavior here. We can't have it. The first thing that you always want to ask is what happened before. Now, I wanted to do this today because we had a discussion week before last, I think it was, with Dr. Grandpichet, and she was talking about how we start to look at behavior, and I thought, oh, it's time for us to do the 3-column sheet again. And I briefly brought it up then, but I thought, oh, I got to cycle back and do antecedent because we were talking about topography of behavior. I know, more jargon. Okay, so I just took a piece of paper and while I was talking to you, folded it into 3s. Easy enough to do, and all you have to do is think of A, B, C. This is easy. We all know our ABCs, but now we're learning the ABCs of behavior. So A, B, C. Well, the A stands for antecedent, and that's what happened before. The B is the behavior, and C stands for consequence. And we all know what consequences are, right? So early on, after someone you know and love has been diagnosed with autism, this is the piece of technology that you want to start with. I know somebody needs to invent an app on a phone that does this for us, but until then, it's so easy. I know that anybody can do this. The ABCs of behavior. And so what you do is whenever something happens that isn't what you had hoped and dreamed would happen, you're going to pull out your trusty little 3-column sheet. And in the B column, because the behavior has happened, right? And it's the thing that's freshest in your mind. They threw things. And remember we said last week, the topography of the behavior, just the facts. You write down in that column, he threw the lamp, he stomped on his little sister's fingers, he threw food across the table, whatever it is, and keep it unemotional. A non-judgmental. So he was disrespectful. No. He rolled his eyes and stomped his foot and stuck his tongue out at me. You can put that in, but let's not put any judgments on it that's disrespect, okay? And that's what's freshest. You write that down. Then you can choose whether you want to go to the C or the A first, and people have different preferences that they want to do. But the A is the antecedent. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, so, he broke the lamp, he stepped on his sister's fingers, he threw the food. What was happening right before that? I asked him to pick up his toys. Okay, so that's what you would write down in the A column. And you would write down the time of day it was, and anything else. You could think, I was on the phone with my mom and I asked him to pick up his toys. These are not hard things. And you just write it down with no judgment because we're just taking data at this point, right? And so you go, okay, that's what it was. And that's not going to mean all that much to you right now. I'm going to be honest with you. And so it's going to feel like it's not rewarding and, you know, you're going to want to shortchange it. Don't, because something magical is going to happen. And then you want to go over to the consequence and think, okay, so he threw the lamp, he threw the food, he stomped on his sister. What happened? And you write down, I put him in timeout, or, you know, I took away his toys, whatever the consequence was that happened. It could be that what the consequence was that you picked him up and you hugged him and you said, I don't think you've had enough to eat and let's go eat something. You know, whatever it was, again, no judgment, right? And you want to keep this for a couple of days. And you just write these things down with no judgment. And you're not going, oh, I shouldn't have done that for the consequence. You know, we can second guess, right? Just write it down, because patterns start to emerge off the page that you might notice after 2 days of doing that. Oh, these things always happen after lunch, or these things always happen after lunch, right after, or these things happen after I fed him a blue icy. And you go, oh, I wonder if it's the food coloring in the blue icy that brings on the tantrum. Or you realize, oh, these things always happen after I ask him to do something. So we know he doesn't like demands put on him. That doesn't mean we stop doing it, but we know what to do when we put a demand on so that we're prepared for the tantrum, right? Looking at the antecedents really start to help us to realize what the function of this behavior is. It's not going to be conclusive, but we're looking at it going, okay, he does this to get out of something, or he does this to get attention, or she does this because she needs soothing after this big, you know, sensory thing happens. You begin to see the patterns. That's why we take the data, because if we don't know why it's happening, we're not going to be effective at changing it. The irony in life is that we always think that the behavior is the be-all, end-all, and that we need to control the behavior. We need to get in there and control You can't control behavior unless you change antecedents and consequences. So if we see the pattern is that after he eats the blue icy, a half hour later, he always throws a tantrum, we can make a choice to only give ices that don't have blue food coloring in them, right? Or if we see that it's in response to having a demand put on, we up the consequence for listening and responding. We get big reward for when we put a demand on and you do it. Like so big that it makes it worth it, right? But we can't do these things and we don't know what's happening. So it's called the 3-term contingency, but it's a sheet of paper, A, B, C. A is for antecedent, what happened before. So my homework for you guys, you don't even have to do the sheet, but just with yourself, think about during the day for you, for the next 24 hours, when things are hard. Is there a time of day that's just like hard? Or there's a time of day when you get, you know, cranky or whatever, and ask yourself what happens right before, and is there something you could change? Is that when it's time to have a break? Is that when it's time to drink more water? Is that when it's time to have a snack? Is that when it's time to take a walk? Ask yourself what's happening right before and what could you change that could affect the whole equation. Do this with yourself. Because once you see the power of it with yourself, you'll be excited to try that with other people as well. That's our jargon for today.